The tolling of the bells at Canterlot Castle signaled both the end of the day and the changing of the guard. As the sun began to sink below the western horizon, the soldiers who had stood ever vigilant on the castle walls retreated to their battlements, like a wave from the shore. At the same time, soaring on her pearly wings, Celestia approached the castle. She glided through an opening in Canterlot's shield spell, banked and looked down at the castle with a small, relieved smile. She circled for a few minutes, ensuring all the castle was safe, before she allowed herself to land on a balcony. On that balcony, Celestia found her sister, Luna, waiting patiently for her. The pair greeted one another with tired but grateful smiles, before Celestia was asked the same question she'd been asked for the previous 7 sunsets. "Were you successful?" Celestia shook her head. "No. There was no traces of Nightmare Moon or her cult to be found in Las Pegasus. What about here?" "Nothing, sister." Celestia nodded, though even that small action revealed her exhaustion. "Good. Has there been any news from Cadence?" "Yes," Luna said. "Despite her reluctance to leave Canterlot in shining armor, she arrived at her fiefdom earlier today. She sent a letter assuring that she would begin her search of her country immediately. If Nightmare Moon is hiding there, she will be found. I am thankful for all her help. She is doing so much more than some of the other minor princes and princesses," Celestia said, as she mentally cursed the royal line. The royal family of Equestria was actually the royal lines of the Earth Pony, Pegasi, and Unicorns from the Old Country, combined into one. When Celestia and Luna saved Equestria from discord and took over the duties of raising and lowering the sun and moon, the populace of the kingdom was overjoyed. The 2 sisters were seen as saviors, and the ponies across Equestria called out for them to rule. This, of course, horrified the old royal families, but the kingdom recovered from discord's reign. They couldn't, and didn't, want to fight a civil war. So an agreement was made. The royal lines merged and adopted Celestia and Luna, who then became the high princesses of Equestria and rulers of the kingdom. The members of the new singular royal family became minor princes and princesses, in effect lords and ladies. They handled the day-to-day rulings of different countries in Equestria, and despite their often over-inflated egos, it was a system that had successfully governed the country for centuries. Right now, however, the royal family was proving to be difficult. While some, like Cadence, were aiding in their search for Nightmare Moon, others blockaded themselves in their homes, like children hiding under their beds. The rest, who neither helped nor hid, didn't take the threat seriously and believed the princesses were simply trying to scare them into subordination. "You cannot worry about them right now, sister," Luna advised Celestia before she spread her wings. "Go inside, and try to get some sleep. I'll meet with my half of the royal army in Manhattan, and continue our search there." "All right," Celestia said as she began to walk inside the castle. Right before she entered, however, she paused and looked back. "Just be careful. If you find Nightmare Moon, call for me. Do not face her alone." "I will take the utmost care, sister." With that, Celestia fluttered her wings and rose to the night sky as her moon began to rise from the eastern horizon. Celestia watched her sister fly off to continue the search and couldn't help but worry about her. She wished to be at her sister's side, but she was already at the brink of exhaustion. Long days and sleepless nights had worn her down. She wished for nothing more than the sweet embrace of dreams in bed. "Soldiers! Attention!" The ranks of fresh recruits snapped to attention under Shining Armor's firm voice. Though he wished to be with his wife, Shining Armor's duties as captain of the Royal Guard had not disappeared with his marriage to Cadence. He was needed at the capital, needed in maintaining the shimmering barrier that currently surrounded Canterlot. His kingdom needed him, just as it needed the new recruits that were standing before him. "They look scared," Shining Armor whispered to a nearby lieutenant. "They are, sir. But they're all we have," the lieutenant whispered back. "If you want, I can call back some of the veteran guards. I'm sure they'd be willing to." Shining Armor shook his head. "No. I told them to go home and rest for a reason. The guard is made up of the toughest equestrian ponies. But they're still ponies. They need time to sleep. They need time to eat, and they deserve to be with their families. We'll just have to make do with these recruits for tonight. What about you, sir? Shouldn't you be getting some rest as well? I'll be fine, Shining Armor assured the lieutenant, ignoring the bags under his eyes. But, sir... Shining Armor ignored his lieutenant's protests. Stepping towards the new recruits, he raised his voice and shouted, "At ease, soldiers! Keep your ears and eyes open!" The recruits fell to a parade rest, but kept their eyes focused on Shining Armor as he spoke. I won't sugarcoat the truth. Equestria is in crisis. With Nightmare Moon threatening our princesses, we need every pony to do their part. Now, I know that you haven't had much training. From what your drill sergeant has told me, you've barely gotten through the basics. That's going to have to be good enough. You need to start watch tonight, so the rest of the guard can sleep when they need. You will be relieved when Princess Luna returns at daybreak. Is that understood? Sir, yes, sir! The line of soldiers responded in unison. During this watch, you'll each be paired with a seasoned member of the Royal Guard. You will do what they tell you to do when they tell you to do it. You won't question their orders. You won't talk back. You must treat their order as if it was coming straight from one of the princesses. Is that clear? Sir, yes, sir! The line of soldiers responded in unison. Good, Shining Armor said with a nod. Now, get to your posts and stay alert. Raise the alarm if you see anything suspicious, and, should Nightmare Moon or her minions sneak to take Canterlot, show them the Royal Guard is not to be underestimated. Dismissed! Sir, yes, sir! The recruits replied once more before quickly departing. Each moved to their post where the veteran guard were to be paired with them, waiting. Shining Armor watched as they took the wall, while others left to begin patrolling the castle's interior. He then turned and, with his lieutenant, retreated to the castle. It would be a long night for both recruits and seasoned guards, and the sunrise could not come fast enough. The night wore on slowly as the moon rose up into the heavens. All was quiet and still around Canterlot Castle, yet the peace was not granted as warmly as it was usually. The smallest sound became reason for panic. The young recruits were jumping at shadows. The small clatter of armor caused one of the veteran guards to pause and look back at the recruit he'd been paired with. She had stumbled at the sight of the painting of Princess Luna and had fallen onto her nose. She was now picking herself up off the ground and rubbing her sore snout as he watched. Keep it together, he advised her. The recruit quickly stumbled up beside him and gave a brief salute. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. It won't happen again, sir. The veteran guard rolled his eyes and resumed patrolling the route as his recruit kept close to his side. She was still shaking in her armor and glancing nervously at shadows. You're going to have a nervous breakdown if you don't relax, he told the recruit when she jumped in fear at the statue of Princess Celestia. I'm sorry, sir. The recruit apologized as she tried to keep herself calm. It's just... What have you heard about Nightmare Moon? Nothing good, the veteran answered as he continued to lead them through the castle. He knew the patrol route by heart. He'd walked it more times than he cared to admit. I heard the Nightmare Moon was actually more powerful than Princess Celestia, that she was able to... Kid, take a breath and stop thinking about it, the veteran guard lectured, keeping his tone flat and professional. You'll never make it through your shift if you psych yourself out. Sorry, the recruit apologized. I'm just worried. Well, you'd be a fool not to be. But you can't let that get to you. Just try and think about something else. The recruit nodded. Oh, okay, so where's Princess Celestia and the rest of the irregular army? In the Manhattan area, the veteran guard replied as he and the recruit rounded the corner. They're doing aerial and magical sweeps to try and find Nightmare Moon and the ponies helping her. Yeah? The recruit agreed, trying to keep herself calm and failing. So, what do we do if Nightmare Moon attacks the castle, besides prey? You and me are going to go and protect the library. That's where Shining Armor and the unicorns from Princess Celestia's school are holed up, the veteran guard answered. The recruit took a few steps back, so she was in line with the veteran guard. Why are they in the library? Spells, the veteran said. He and the recruit rounded a corner, moving deeper into the castle. The unicorns from the princess's school are going through the library to try and find spells we can use against Nightmare Moon. Spells to protect the castle and find where Nightmare Moon is hiding. Personally, I hope they let us find a spell to get rid of her for good. What about Shining Armor? He's in there to protect those unicorns, and they're helping him too, the veteran answered as a pair continued to their patrol. They're making sure he doesn't burn himself out magically, trying to maintain his barrier spell. That's how he's been able to go without sleep for the past week. From what I've heard, the unicorns have been taking turns sleeping for Shining Armor. They sleep for him, and he gets the energy he needs to keep going. But what if Nightmare Moon gets through Shining Armor's barrier? She wouldn't just get through, the veteran said firmly. Shining Armor's barrier is smart. He can tell it what to keep out and what to let in. Right now, that barrier's been magicked so that it can keep out any one thing that is stronger, or as strong, than Princess Luna. The only way Nightmare Moon could get in is if she's broke the barrier, and that's why we're here, to hold her and her minions back should that happen. The recruit swallowed nervously and shook her armor once more. Just hold her back? What? Do you think you can beat her? No! The recruit shouted, as if she was about to be thrown to a pack of lions. Then yes, we're just to hold our ground. We keep Nightmare Moon back until word of the attack can reach the armies out in the field. Then, whichever princess is out, the army will fly back here. A confident smile spread on the veteran's face. No matter how strong Nightmare Moon is, she can't take on both princesses at the same time. Well then, I guess we'll just have to make sure, be very careful that no pony raises the alarm, the younger guard said, her voice shifting in tone. The strange answer, in combination with the change in the recruit's voice, was enough to make their veteran guard turn. He was about to ask the recruit what was wrong. The words, however, never left his mouth. Before he could react, before he could scream, the veteran guard found himself engulfed in a dark cloud. When the cloud released him, he slumped over on the floor, lost in a deep sleep. The cloud itself stemmed from the recruit, who smiled devilishly as it receded back into her body. She used her magic to levitate the sleeping veteran guard and tossed him into an empty room, before turning herself into a cloud and zipping through the castle hallways. That cloud was joined by others. Each cloud had once been one of the recruits, and each had performed a similar action. They had taken out the veteran guards they were paired with, and now flowed through the castle to deal with the guards that remained. Then, when the castle's armed defenders lay asleep, the clouds began to converge on the library. Outside the library's main entrance, the clouds began to merge together into a single mass. It grew larger and larger with each cloud that joined it, and as it grew larger, it became a swirling field of stars. It twisted and turned as it waited for the few trailing clouds to reach it, and once it was whole, the cloud floated towards the door. A single tendril extended from the cloud. It sank deep into the darkness of the keyhole and began to fiddle with the tumblers inside. It twisted and turned, and with a resounding click, it made the lock slide into place, sealing the door from the clouds. The cloud, as a whole, then sank, slipping beneath the door seam, and entered the library. At first, the silence in the castle persisted, but then a few muffled shouts began to escape the library. Those shouts were followed by the sounds of spells being unleashed and screams of terror. There was a commotion as furniture was thrown, and a thumping of hooves filled the castle hallways as ponies tried to get through the library locked doors. The commotion persisted for a few moments, before ending as quickly as it began. The library and castle fell silent once more, a silence broken only by the sound of a library door locking. The doors then swung open, revealing what had happened inside. All of the unicorns that had been in the library, including Shining Armor, lay on the floor, sound asleep, while Nightmare Moon strode into the hallway with a confident smile. Nexus was right. That really was too easy, Nightmare Moon mused with a small chuckle as her voice returned to its normal tone. The plan had worked. Much like the time she had become the Shadow Bolts to tempt Rainbow Dash, Nightmare Moon had divided herself into multiple clones that then took on the shapes of other ponies. In this case, she had taken the place of a few dozen guards in training who had been kept from reaching boot camp by Spell Nexus and the Children of Nightmare. It had been interesting being a small army of ponies for several days. Nightmare Moon had never before divided herself into so many copies, but it had served its purpose. She had been able to pass through Canterlot's barrier and infiltrate the castle. Each of her smaller clones had been able to ascertain a portion of information from the veteran guards. And in the end, she had been given everything she needed to take the castle in a single swoop. It was a grand gambit of a plan, one Nexus hadn't entirely approved of, since it meant sparing the castle guard. Still, it was how Nightmare Moon wanted it done, and was a plan that had worked. The castle was undefended, no alarm had been raised, and Luna would not be returning to the castle until dawn. That gave Nightmare Moon all the time she could want to find and deal with Celestia. She'd then lie in wait for Luna to return, for her to walk straight into her own demise. Then, once she had spilt the blood of both princesses, the rest of Equestria would be left to cower in fear as she took her place as queen. The first room Nightmare Moon had checked was Celestia's bedchamber. The princess should have been resting. However, Celestia wasn't there, and Nightmare Moon was forced to begin searching the rest of the castle. She worked her way through the halls, checking every room as she went. Each empty room caused Nightmare Moon's concern to grow. She feared Celestia may have sensed something was wrong and fled, or called for Luna's return. That was the one thing the Royal Guard had correct. She did not dare face them both at once. She had to pick each of the Royal Sisters off one at a time if she was to be successful in her coup. Nearing the ground floor of the castle, Nightmare Moon almost rounded a corner of the hallway. Then, a noise began to reach her ears. Hoof steps. Almost immediately, she returned to a cloud of smoke and disguised herself as a rookie Pegasus guard. She then waited a few moments for the hoof steps to get closer before she jumped around the corner and confronted the unknown pony.
Halt! Who goes there?
The pony in question flinched, fumbling with her magic. He stumbled and swayed in an effort to keep the covered tray he was carrying from hitting the floor. It was a frantic few seconds of juggling, but eventually the unicorn got hold of the tray and breathed a sigh of relief before looking up at the disguised Nightmare Moon. My apologies. I am Silver Platter. I work in the royal kitchens. The unicorn stallion replied hurriedly. Thankfully, that it was only a guard that had startled him.
Only guards are supposed to be out at this hour.
Nightmare Moon snipped, disguising her voice so she sounded like one of the young recruits.
What are you doing?
Delivering a meal to Princess Celestia. Nightmare Moon let her fake anger cool. She relaxed her body and folded her wings.
Isn't it rather late for the princess to be eating?
Yes, it is, Silver Platter agreed. But our pet Phoenix delivered the order to the kitchen, and I'm not exactly in a place to question the princess's eating habits.
I suppose not,
Nightmare Moon remarked with a chuckle as an idea formed in her head.
I, however, can't allow any pony to wander the walls. I'll escort you to the princess, though I do not know where she is presently.
Princess Celestia has requested the meal be brought to her throne room, Silver Platter replied as he walked beside the guard. Nightmare Moon nodded.
Then we shall head to the throne room. Please, lead the way.
Of course, Silver Platter said as the pair began to make their way through the castle. They strode without speaking for a few moments. But then Silver Platter broke the silence to ease his obvious strained nerves. So, I thought the royal guards were supposed to patrol in pairs.
I'm just a reserve brought in so the normal royal guard can rest. There aren't enough of us to keep paired patrols,
Nightmare Moon answered flatly. I guess that makes sense. The royal guard has probably been getting less sleep than the princesses. If what I've heard is true, they've been pulling double and triple shifts. Princess Celestia tried to tell them that it wasn't necessary, but the generals wouldn't hear it.
So all the guards and precautions are being done against the princess's wishes?
The disguised Nightmare Moon asked. Silver Platter nodded. Yes, ma'am. But what else are we supposed to do? The princesses are in danger, and if we don't try to protect them, no pony will.
So you would face Nightmare Moon despite being horribly outmatched just to protect the princesses?
Me? Oh, heavens no, Silver Platter replied, laughing nervously. I'm just a unicorn that loves bringing good food to good ponies. I wouldn't stand a chance against Nightmare Moon. She'd squash me like a bug or gobble me up. No, defending the princesses is what you and the other gods are doing. I can respect that.
Thank you, Nightmare Moon said, though the words tasted rotten in her mouth.
She shouldn't have been accepting thanks that she was one of the guards and princesses feared. Still, she kept her composure and let the conversation die before bringing up another.
What are you bringing the princess?
Nothing much. Just a lot of comfort food, though I can certainly understand why she wants it. Stressful times, after all. Silver Platter levitated the plate he was carrying lower and lifted up the lid so the disguised Nightmare Moon could see the food. I've got a bowl of maroon carrot soup, a few freshly pickled apples from the princess's golden apple tree, and a very large slice of cloud cake with a frosted flower.
Nightmare Moon arched an eyebrow. That soup is purple.
Silver Platter chuckled and put the lid back on the food tray. Of course. Maroon carrots are purple, so it would make sense that soup made from them would be purple. They're actually sweeter than most common carrots.
I prefer celery soup,
Nightmare Moon commented before the pair rounded the corner, and the large set of doors came into view. I'm a fan of tomato soup myself. Anyways, we're here now. If you wouldn't mind, would you wait out here? It'll take me a couple of minutes to get the princess her meal, and then you can escort me back to the kitchen.
I don't believe that'll be necessary, Nightmare Moon answered Silver Platter. After all, you're about to go to sleep.
Before Silver Platter could turn around, Nightmare Moon had transformed into a cloud and engulfed him, but in a few moments, the deed was done. She laid the sleeping Silver Platter on the floor before disguising herself as his image. She then drew the covered silver tray close, and ensured the food inside had not been spilled before moving towards the throne room door. Celestia sat on her throne, staring mindlessly at the ceiling. She was tired, and would have been asleep, but sleep did not come easily. She dreaded Nightmare Moon's coming attack, fearing for Luna's safety, and to top it all off, no pony had seen or heard from Twilight Sparkle in days. There was simply too much knocking, weighing on her mind, to get any sleep. Celestia perked her ears up and moved her gaze from the ceiling to the throne room doors, as a figure poked his head inside. My apologies if I disturbed you, Your Highness, but I have the meal you requested. Thank you, Silver Platter, Celestia greeted. And I do apologize for making a request like this so late in the evening. No apologies necessary, Your Highness, Silver Platter replied. He crossed the room and presented the serving tray to the princess. Though I hope you do not mind if I linger. That way I can take the dishes back to the kitchen once you've finished. Celestia smiled and took the tray with her own magic. I do not mind in the slightest. She then removed the tray lid and sniffed the warm soup. The aromas offered her some comfort, not as much as the food itself would bring. There was no secret, especially after that Gabby Gams article, that she had a tendency to eat when she was anxious, to seek comfort in sweets and savory foods. It was a habit that, thankfully, didn't cause Celestia too much trouble, though it was still a source of frustration on occasion. She still didn't know what cruel hoof of fate put that photographer near Canterlot Castle the day she did go a little overboard, but that was a minor and distant concern of the past. The present weighed far more heavily on Celestia's mind. Still, once Nightmare Moon was found and dealt with, she would need to put herself on a diet. She needed to get her eating habits back in order. She had indulged in cloud cake a few too many times in the past few weeks. The Pegasus-made dessert was her greatest weakness, at least when it came to food. The dessert, however, she would save for last. With the help of a spoon, Celestia began to enjoy the soup, which danced across her tongue and warmed her insides. Then came the golden apples, which offered a crisp freshness that was unmatched by any other fruit in the kingdom. Finally, she allowed herself to eat the cloud cake. Each bite of it melted in her mouth, coating her tongue with its light, rich flavor. The last thing Celestia's mouth was a large frosted flower that had been on the top of the slice of cloud cake. She chomped down on the carefully formed mass of frosting and licked her lips to gather every last trace of its sweet flavor. A smile then slipped onto her face, and she leaned back in her throne. Silver Platter, seeing his princess had finished her meal, took the plate and set it off to one side before he began to walk around the back of the throne. Was the meal to your liking? Celestia nodded. It was delicious. Be sure to extend my thanks to the kitchen staff. I may be able to get enough sleep tonight thanks to that meal. Good, Silver Platter said from behind the throne as his voice began to shift. Every pony deserves a last meal. Celestia snapped her head to the side, watching as a figure stepped out from behind the throne. While Silver Platter had been the pony that disappeared behind her regal seat, the pony that stepped into her vision was decidedly not the unicorn waiter. Celestia bristled, furrowed her brow, and glared at Nightmare Moon. How did you get in here? She glanced at the window and saw Shining Armor's barrier was still in place. How did you get into Canterlot? I would think, Celestia, that after being betrayed by Spell Nexus, that you would use a little more caution. Nightmare Moon mused, with a taunting smile on her lips. She walked out from behind the throne. Each step she took exuded her confidence at the moment, like she was a cat that had outwitted a cornered mouse. Are you saying that Shining Armor let you in? Celestia asked, only to shake her head firmly. No, that is impossible. He would not side with you. True, but I did not need him to, Nightmare Moon commented, before she broke into a cloud. That cloud divided itself up into multiple pieces, each one floating to a section clear of the throne floor, before manifesting into a doppelganger of each royal guard. Each clone looked uniquely different, but they were all looking at Celestia with Nightmare Moon's turquoise eyes. Nightwind, one of your loyal guards, had been an ally to Spell Nexus since the beginning of the Children of Nightmare. The many parts of Nightmare Moon said in unison. She told me of Shining Armor's barrier, how it would keep out any single pony that was of sufficient magical power. Celestia showed no signs of panic. She just furrowed her eyebrows and looked over the clones that stood before her. It did not, however, stop you from entering in pieces. Yes, I recognize you now, Nightmare Moon. You were the recruits that I saw in the courtyard when I arrived. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, you snuck into the guise of ponies we could trust. The many clones laughed as they turned back into clouds, and their laughter combined into a single voice as Nightmare Moon reformed itself into a single alicorn mare. Yes, it was a brilliant disguise, wasn't it? Yes, Celestia begrudgingly admitted. And it would seem that you are as powerful as you were 1,000 years ago, even though you lack the strength Luna currently possesses. You can thank Spell Nexus for that. Whatever power Luna retained after the elements of harmony purified her was replaced by power drawn from the Everfree Forest. He really is very talented at crafting spells. And what of my guards and servants? Celestia pressed. I can only imagine you went through them to get to me. Don't worry your pretty little head, Celestia. Your guards are now catching up on the sleep they deprived themselves by protecting you. As for your servants, they are unaware of what occurs, except for Silver Platter. He sleeps in the hallway just outside the throne room. Celestia's stern exterior cracked and confusion filled her eyes. You didn't hurt any pony. I had no need to, so why would I waste my time? Nightmare Moon asked with a short, confident chuckle. You had no need to bring lightning down on the ponies at the Summer Sun celebration, and yet you had no qualms doing so then, Celestia said. She rose from her throne and started to walk towards Nightmare Moon. Now you are showing mercy and restraint. Perhaps, despite your appearance, you are not quite the same mare I knew once then. A chilling laugh escaped Nightmare Moon's lips. You are just as delusional as Twilight Sparkle. And where is my student, Nightmare Moon? Celestia asked. I can only imagine the reason no pony has seen her in days is you. She is in my dungeon, Nightmare Moon answered. She kept a safe distance from Celestia, moving towards the far side of the throne room as Celestia reached the bottom of the very large, extravagant throne. The pair of alicorns then began to circle each other, Celestia wearing a stern frown, while Nightmare Moon wore a smug smile. "And how did she end up there?" Celestia asked cautiously, on guard for any sudden movements. "She came to me, if you would believe it," Nightmare Moon answered. "I would have thought that you'd taught her better than to go running to the very ponies who would want to capture her. But that's what she did. She wanted to tell me some sob story about how sorry she was for what happened. It was truly pathetic." Celestia ruffled her wings as she forced herself more intently on Nightmare Moon. "You let her live, even though as long as she's alive the elements of harmony are a threat to you. I will tell you what I told Spell Nexus. I will deal with Twilight Sparkle in my own way, and in my own time." Nightmare Moon snipped, horn beginning to glow. "Besides, you have more important things to be worried about, Celestia." Nightmare Moon's magic surged, and in the air beside her a magical blade took shape. It was forged of what looked like black metal that shined and flashed like calm water beneath the night sky. While Olicorns were very powerful, they were not immortal. Their strength came from the amount of magic they held, and that best tool to counter that magic was a weapon of pure, compressed magic energy, much like the sword Nightmare Moon now wielded. "An odd level of decorum, Nightmare Moon," Celestia commented. She formed her own magical sword, pristine white blade, which she held in a defensive position, while she and Nightmare Moon continued to circle one another. "When the Changeling Queen assaulted Canterlot, she and I traded our most powerful spells. Why would you desire to cross swords with me instead of assaulting me head-on?" Nightmare Moon laughed, twirling her sword once in the air. "Because I know the defensive spells you still linger in this castle, Celestia. Some of your veteran guards were very informative. Were we to clash spells as you and this Changeling Queen did, the castle would light up like a beacon and draw Luna back. That, and I know one other thing." Nightmare Moon lifted the blade to her nose, admiring its glint before flicking her gaze back to Celestia. "A little tidbit Nexus told me about immortal alicorns like you and I. Magic is our strength, but it is also our weakness as well. Where normal swords hold no threat, a blade formed of magic can wound, can injure, and can kill with greater ease than any random blast of magic." "And so that is your intent?" Celestia whispered. The pair still circled one another, each waiting for another to make the first move. "You came here to kill me." "Did you expect less?" "No, I suppose not. But what do you intend to do with Twilight? What are your plans for her friends, and the others who wield the elements of harmony?" Celestia asked. "Well, they pose no danger, as long as I have Twilight," Nightmare Moon noted confidently. "They will get their just reward. I ordered my guards to capture them unharmed, so that I'll be able to decide their fate." Celestia arched an eyebrow and allowed her sword to lower an inch. "Unharmed? Why would you care about their well-being? Why not let your minions bring them in bruised and battered?" Nightmare Moon snorted in contempt. "I will not let Spell Nexus or anyone else take the vengeance that I deserve for those ponies did to me. While you would not know it, being torn off another pony like a cheap costume by the elements of harmony is an excruciating experience, and they will endure double the pain they caused me that day." "Then what do you intend to do with them?" Celestia questioned. "Whatever I see fit," snarled Nightmare Moon. "Their fate is in my hooves and no pony. Neither you nor Nexus has any right to question my decisions. I am above reproach." "Yet you speak as if Nexus has been questioning your orders." Nightmare Moon laughed, though she made sure to keep her sword raised. "He is a fool who believes he knows my desires, but I am not so easily understood by such common ponies. He knows of my desire to seize Equestria, and he acts to support that, as he should. He was his hooves, however, that hurt Twilight, and it was his belief that I desired to have her hung or beheaded." "And isn't that your desire?" Celestia asked, pressing the issue. "Would it not be simpler for you to let him do as he wishes with Twilight? Why not let him save you the trouble Nightmare Moon launched herself at Celestia while swinging the sword in a wide arc.
No, Pony! That's Twilight except for me!
Celestia barely managed to block the blow, the clang of metal striking metal echoing across the throne room. Nightmare Moon was attempting a thrust, making Celestia spread her wings. With a single powerful flap, she flew herself back, dodging the blade and putting more distance between herself and Nightmare Moon.
I do not wish to fight you,
Celestia said. The Nightmare Moon did not falter in her attack. Celestia was just barely able to raise her sword to block a downward swing from Nightmare Moon, and the two magical swords clashed against each other with a resounding clang. Nightmare Moon pressed her blade against Celestia's in an attempt to break through her defense with sheer force.
Then surrender yourself!
Celestia buckled, momentarily under the weight of Nightmare Moon's attack, but she would not be so easily defeated. A careful turn of her blade sent Nightmare Moon's sword down to the throne room floor. Celestia then proceeded to bring the pommel of her sword around to strike Nightmare Moon in the throat. The sudden thrust of the sword's blunt hilt into the neck caused Nightmare Moon to stumble back, coughing and wheezing from the blow. Celestia, however, did not press her offensive. She instead stayed on the far side of the throne room, lowering her sword as her voice echoed across the marble hall. You have not told me what your minions did to Twilight Sparkle. But what have you done to her, Nightmare Moon?
Nothing,
Nightmare Moon choked out.
She has been recovering from the injuries given to her by Nexus, under the care of my castle doctors.
An expression of surprise etched itself on Celestia's face.
You are caring for her. I told you, no pony else will have my vengeance. I am having her injuries treated simply so she can properly experience the pain that I induce on her when I make her pay for what she's done to me.
Nightmare Moon's shout hung in the air, words that echoed, not with rage but with pain. Celestia remained silent until the echoes faded, and then spoke in an odd, almost concerned tone in her voice. And what has she done to you, Nightmare Moon? The question struck Nightmare Moon's heart and set it ablaze.
Don't you dare speak as if you don't know, she yelled,
her words dripping with loathing as she recovered from Celestia's blow.
It was her and her friends that set the elements of harmony upon me. That, and I have not forgotten her most recent crimes. Twilight Sparkle betrayed, lied to, and above all else abandoned me.
Listen to me, Nightmare. Celestia paused, taking a step towards her as her tone became more pleading. No. Listen to me, Nyx. I am sorry. I did not want to take you away from Twilight forcibly, and I had no intention of returning you to her the next morning. Nightmare Moon grit her teeth.
Those are nothing but lies. You and Twilight conspired against me that night. Twilight knew what you were going to do, and she did nothing to stop it. She wanted you to take me away.
Nyx, that is not true, Celestia said firmly. Twilight tried to convince me you weren't a danger. She didn't want to let you go. Nightmare Moon drew in a breath, her cold composure returning.
But she did let me go, and I will never forgive her for that. And don't think I'll ever forgive you either, seethed Nightmare Moon.
She pointed the tip of her sword at Celestia.
It is all your fault. Everything is your fault. You allowed the ponies in the past to ignore the night sky, turning Luna into me. You sent your student to Ponyville, where she and her friends murdered me with the elements of harmony. You took me away from Ponyville, from my simple, ignorant life.
Nightmare Moon sucked in her breath, held it, and fixed her accusing gaze on Celestia.
All that I have lost, all that I have become, all that I have claimed to be is but a shadow of your actions. Tonight, you shall pay for your sins, Celestia!
With those words, Nightmare Moon lashed out, springing into the air and soaring across the room while yelling in a furious rage. She brought her sword beneath her and swiped at Celestia's as she flew by. Celestia dodged to the left and spun around just in time to see Nightmare Moon land and resume her ground attack. Sparks soared into the air as the blades clashed again and again. The pair was evenly matched for a time, but then Celestia saw an opening. Nightmare Moon swung too wide, overextended her attack, and Celestia seized the opportunity. As quickly as her hooves would allow, she spun around and bucked. She hit Nightmare Moon in the side, and the force of the blow sent her flying across the room. She would have likely crashed into a wall, but with a flutter of her wings, Nightmare Moon was able to right herself. She pressed her hooves to the floor, skidded to a stop and glared across the room at Celestia with murderous intent.
Nyx, please, I implore you to listen to me. End this senseless fight. I promise.
Nightmare Moon ignored Celestia and charged back into battle. Both their blades clashed once more. Nightmare Moon was putting all of her strength behind her attack, and it was just enough to force Celestia's blade to the side. Knowing her defenses had been broken through, Celestia bent her legs and tried to jump away, but she could not escape without harm. Nightmare Moon struck out again. The tip of her sword nicked Celestia's cheek, leaving a small cut that began to weep blood. Celestia landed a few feet back, and released a surge of magic from her body. The wave of magic pushed the Nightmare Moon back, and gave Celestia a moment to rest as she needed. She could feel herself bleeding, but she remained focused on her opponent. Nyx, please. Nightmare Moon winced, her voice dripping with her hatred for Celestia.
Stop calling me Nyx. I am not Nyx. I can never be Nyx because of you. Because of you, I am and forever will be Nightmare Moon. Now silence your tongue before I cut it out, and quit holding back. Fight me, coward! I am not a coward,
Celestia retorted firmly as she wiped the blood away with her right forehoof.
And I am not the only one holding back. You strike only to injure me, Nyx. And that is not the only time you have shown mercy. You put my guards to sleep, where in the past you would have not batted an eye at seeing them injured or even dead. You speak of Twilight's betrayal, and you have not taken your vengeance against her. If you truly wanted Nightmare Moon, if you truly were her, then why did you show mercy? Nightmare Moon struggled with her words. Her mind locked up as she was forced to face with Celestia's questions. Why was she holding back? Why wasn't she giving it her all? She had practiced using the sword with the guards in their training. She knew how to fight. So why wasn't this going for killing blows? Nyx, Celestia began, lowering her sword as the fight slipped into a lull. I know you've been hurt. I know you have a right to be angry at me. And I know I do not deserve forgiveness for the past I have played in turning you into this. Yet, if this is truly what you wanted, you would have killed me with that last blow. Please, end this farce. Let's put our swords away. It is not too late. Too late? Nightmare Moon echoed, an inferno of rage flashing to life behind her eyes. Too late? It was always too late for me! Nightmare Moon yelled, her voice growling until she was shouting from the top of her lungs. At the same time, her mane began to swirl and surge, reflecting the storm of anger that raged inside her. With a screech, Nightmare Moon launched herself at Celestia, this time accompanying her charge with a volley of lightning. Celestia managed to block a few of the arcane bolts with her sword, but she was struck by others. The bolts did little damage themselves, but they caused Celestia to wince, which made it all the more difficult for her to block Nightmare Moon's coming sword. The rage and magic behind Nightmare Moon's blade would soon prove to be too much. Their weapons clashed with a thunderous crack, and before Celestia could retreat, her sword began to fracture. It burst apart, shattering like glass as its magic failed beneath the force of Nightmare Moon's blow. The magic released from her broken blade knocked Celestia to her hooves. She rolled and bounced across the throne room floor, eventually coming to a stop at the base of the throne. The shards of the shattered blade had speckled her with small cuts, and her breathing was labored in pain from the magical knockback pulsing through her body. Celestia took a few deep, gasping breaths to try and recover more quickly, but it was already too late. When she looked up, she saw Nightmare Moon standing over her, and felt Nightmare Moon's black, magical blade press against her neck. It is over, Celestia, Nightmare Moon said. And Celestia knew it was true. Yet instead of closing her eyes and waiting for the bitter end, she locked her gaze on Nightmare Moon. The pair stared at each other for a long time, both still as stone. You're still holding back, Celestia said. Nightmare Moon pressed her sword into Celestia's neck. Shut up! I could end this right now. I could kill you. Just a quick slash of my sword and your life would be forfeit. Yes, you have defeated me, Celestia admitted. But I implore you, stop, Nyx, and listen. Nightmare Moon put more pressure on her sword, the blade breaking the surface of Celestia's skin and drawing some blood. Why? Why should I stop now? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't slash your throat. Because though you deny it,
Your actions and words tell me that you care about Twilight, Celestia calmly explained. So I ask you to stop, Nyx, and realize where you stand. This is your point of no return. If you finish me here, you will secure Equestria as your own, but across this kingdom, even in Twilight's eyes, you shall never be seen as anything but a murderer and a monster. Nightmare eyes pulsated for a moment at the mention of Twilight Sparkle, and she lowered her sword a few inches. Celestia dared to hope that Nightmare Moon had finally listened to reason, but a few moments later the sword was back against her neck. Yet the murderous intent that had once filled Nightmare Moon's eyes had faded, and her sword was trembling. Then, with a slow breath, Nightmare Moon lowered her blade. She spoke with a broken, hollow voice as her mane began to wrap around Celestia. Your time will come, but before then you will know the pain that I have suffered. For 1,000 years you'll be banished to the sun, held among its magic, just as I was held by the moon. Only then, once you've known the full extent of my suffering, shall I allow you death. With those final words and a flash of light from within her mane, Nightmare Moon made good on her word. She completed her spell and banished Celestia to the sun. Yet, even after Celestia was gone, Nightmare Moon remained where she was. She stared at the spot where Celestia had been. Then she looked up at Celestia's now empty throne. With little warning, Nightmare Moon sucked in a deep breath, cried out with rage, and threw her sword. It pierced the air like an arrow, and, with a resounding thunk of metal against wood, it sank into the... Luna banked to one side, looking over Canterlot. It was nearly dawn, and she was returning to the castle so Celestia could fly out, meet the army, and continue the search for Nightmare Moon. The search over the evening had been fruitless. Both exhaustion and disappointment made Luna yearn for the comfort of her bed. Yet as Luna drew closer to the castle, she began to notice how still and quiet it was. She saw no guards moving along the battlements, saw no pony at all. Some servants should at least have been out tending to the early morning chores, but there was no pony around. Shining Armor's barrier was also nowhere to be seen. Luna felt the air catch in her chest, and with a few furious flaps of her wings, she surged towards the castle. She dove into the courtyard, but did not land or slow down. Instead, she threw open the castle door with her magic and soared through the hallway. It was something Celestia wasn't able to do because of her size, but Luna was still small enough that her wingspan fit inside the corridors. The castle was deserted, utterly empty, and it did nothing to improve Luna's nerves. She flew with greater speed, fearing the worst as she raced among the halls. Luna first went to Celestia's bedroom, but when her sister wasn't there, Luna went to the next likely place, the throne room. When she couldn't sleep, Celestia always liked to go there. Sister! Sister, are you there? Luna called out, landing in the doorway. She looked first to the throne, desperately hoping to see Celestia there. Her sister, however, was nowhere to be seen. In her place, standing just in front of the throne, was an all-black alicorn with swirling magical mane and tail. Luna felt herself tense when she saw Nightmare Moon, a figure she only ever saw in a reflection back in a mirror. Was this really what she used to look like? She could now see why so many ponies had told scary stories about her. A pitch-black mare with a magical mane and tail of the night and piercing dragon eyes. It was the kind of thing nightmares were made of. Eyes glaring, Luna quickly began moving across the room. Though she was walking on the regal red rug that had went from the door to Celestia's throne, Luna's hoofsteps were still audible. You're back earlier than I expected. Or perhaps it is later in the morning than I realized? Nightmare Moon regarded. She turned to face Luna, revealing her tired eyes. Where is Celestia? Luna asked firmly. Your precious sister is getting a taste of her own medicine. She's been banished to the sun, Nightmare Moon replied, forcing firmness into her voice. Do not take this as a sign of mercy. I merely wish for Celestia to know the torture of imprisonment that I endured for 1,000 years. Once she has known that, her life is forfeit. Imprisonment we endured, Luna corrected. Or have you forgotten where you come from? I have not forgotten. All the memories I have are either of my own or the memories of you when you were the one called Nightmare Moon. It is from those memories that I know my desires and destiny. It is destiny, yet you too were too weak to seize for your own, but a destiny that shall be mine. But is a destiny what you want? Asked Luna.
I cannot recall any time when I did not want the eternal night and the defeat of Equestria's royalty, which now includes you.
Nightmare Moon answered. She manifested her magical sword and began to walk towards Luna.
Defend yourself.
Luna formed two smaller, shorter blades which floated on either side of her.
Is that truly all that you can remember? Do you not recall the time you spent with Twilight Sparkle, Nyx? Do not call me that. I am Nightmare Moon.
But do you remember the time you spent with her? Luna pressed.
Nightmare Moon snorted contemptuously. Of course I do. I would not forget something so regrettably, so easily. Then you have memories beyond being Nightmare Moon. Beyond the memories you had inherited from me. What is your point? Those memories are a few short months compared to the hundreds of years of memories I have from the time when we were one and the same. But I know those memories were 1,000 years happier than the memories we share. I came to know you briefly, Nyx. At the dinner after the spring festival, you talked with friends, of school, of Twilight. You were happy. Why are you throwing all that away to pursue old desires that were never yours? They are my desires, Nightmare Moon spat. I want vengeance. I want Equestria. I want ponies to look upon the beauty of my night. But it isn't your night. It is mine, Luna stressed. I am the one that raises and lowers the moon. I am the one who got jealous of Celestia. And I am the one who felt unappreciated and grew to loathe the ponies who slept through my night. But that is because I am the one who crafted and made my own night, not you.
Nightmare Moon stomped a hoof.
It will be my night soon enough. When you're gone, I shall inherit your status as ruler of the nighttime sky, just as I've inherited your memories. I will make the sky more beautiful than you ever could. Ponies who look upon it will be in such awe that they will love the night, love me, and forget all about the sun and you royal sisters.
Nyx, you don't have to be this way, as I was, Luna said sternly, as if she was explaining a difficult concept to a child throwing a tantrum. Being a Nightmare Moon is a choice, not a curse of blood you must inherit. Nightmare Moon hung her head and lowered her sword.
No, you are wrong, for I have inherited much more from you than just your memories. The loathing, the fear, the hatred of Equestria that they had for you when became mine to bear. The elements of harmony left you to live a happy life again, while I became your scapegoat, the monster in the dark that you were saved from. But Nyx, I told you, do not call me that. I am Nightmare Moon.
She seethed as her eyes flashed with determination. She raised her sword and pointed his tip at Luna.
Now, defend yourself.
Very well. But I shall never refer to you as Nyx again, Luna said as she raised her own blades.
You have made your choice. You have chosen to threaten me, my kingdom, and my sister. You have refused to see reason, have chosen to be as blind as I once was, and have forced my hoof. I will not stand down nor surrender, Nightmare Moon. If you wish to have Equestria, you must take it from me.
Luna lifted her swords, her voice carrying the final echoes of a warning.
But know this, Nightmare Moon. Once our swords clash, from now until eternity, it won't be my past that haunts you, but your own.
Nightmare Moon laughed as she began to stride towards Luna like a storm cloud rolling over Equestria.
I will not be dissuaded, and no matter how valiantly you fight, you will fail. You will share Celestia's fate, because this is my kingdom now.
Billy's whispers and hushed voices filled Ponyville Square. Every pony in town had gathered outside the town hall. The sun was supposed to have risen several hours ago, but instead the moon still lingered in the center of the sky, filling the world with its pale glow. What was worse was that several craters had appeared on the moon. They darkened the moon's surface, returning it to the rough silhouette of the mare the moon had adorned for 1,000 years. Beneath that moon, the mayor of Ponyville, Ivory Scroll, moved up to the podium set on the veranda of the town hall. It looked like she was crying, but the mayor wiped her tears and cleared her throat, forcing herself to be strong. "Fillies and gentle colts, as mayor of Ponyville, it is my duty, my solemn duty, to announce that Princess Celestia and Luna have been—" She choked on her words, but after licking her lips, she managed to continue. "They have been defeated." A hushed gasp cascaded through the crowd. Ponies looked at each other with disbelief, none daring to speak as they hung on every word that left Ivory's mouth. "I just received word after when sunrise was due to occur. During the night, Nightmare Moon seized Canterlot Castle. She defeated Princess Celestia and then laid in wait until Princess Luna returned to the castle a few hours ago. Both princesses are imprisoned in the sun and the moon, respectively." Every scroll coughed again, trying to keep their strength in her voice from failing. "Nightmare Moon has hereby declared herself Queen of Equestria, and the children of Nightmare, the ponies responsible for her return, are already taking control of the government. Their forces have secured the capital, due in part to a swelling of their ranks following the coup." Ivory's voice began to tremble as she forced out the few final words. "The children of Nightmare have warned that any open rebellion against the new crown will be met harshly and that we have seen the last of the sun. This night will last forever." Another gasp cut through the crowd, and a few ponies even fainted. However, before the harsh truth could even properly sink into the residents of Ponyville, another voice rang out through the now everlasting night. "Oh, Miss Mayor, you speak as if this were some great tragedy." Every head in the crowd spun around, looking back to see Nightmare Moon striding towards them. She was flanked on either side by two of her royal guard. They were clad in armor that matched hers in color, and like her eyes, theirs seemed to glow in the night with turquoise irises. The crowd quickly parted to make a path. Much like they did, Nightmare Moon had returned. Some even bowed as she passed, a sight that made Nightmare Moon smile. She couldn't expect them all to be so eager to bow right away. It was a start, though, and she could be patient. After all, she had all the time in the world. Once she had reached the veranda of the town hall, Nightmare Moon used her magic to move the podium Ivory Scroll had been speaking on to one side. She then looked to Ivory Scroll and saw that the mayor had reverted back several steps and was trembling like a leaf. Still, Ivory managed to bow to her new queen. Satisfied with the level of respect the mayor had shown her, Nightmare Moon turned to face the crowd and let her voice reach a commanding volume. "Citizens of Ponyville, it is hard to believe that merely weeks ago I stood among you, freshly reborn, and now I am already your queen. One must truly wonder how sturdy your monarchy was, considering how easily it was conquered. Now I stand as your one true queen. Under me, Equestria shall flourish under eternal night. You need not fear for your crops or your homes, for while the night can be cold, those most loyal to me have already begun their act of making this kingdom a place that can thrive beneath the moonlight. They have long been prepared for its eternal night. And there is further reason to rejoice," Nightmare Moon told them. "For, as I have promised on the day of my return, I have not forgotten the kindness you all showed me when I was but a scared little filly. For this I've decided to give Ponyville a great honor, to bestow upon it a gift that no other town in Equestria shall share." The ground shook. A distant rumbling reached the ears of every pony as Nightmare Moon's eyes glowed. All heads turned to the distant rock quarries in the hills just beyond Ponyville, where the rumbling seemed to be emanating from. For a moment, none of them were able to see anything. Yet as the rumbling continued, a single pointed spire began to rise up against the horizon. The rumbling then rose to a terrifying symphony, as the world around split in two. At the same time, the first spire continued to rise higher, and was soon joined by others. Eventually, a whole castle has risen up into view, casting a harsh shadow and looking down upon Ponyville like a giant snake ready to strike. When the fortress had been fully risen, and the rumbling had stopped, Nightmare Moon looked down and savored the shock and horror on her subjects' faces. Yes, ponies of Ponyville, your eyes do not deceive you. For this time being, Canterlot shall remain the administrative capital of Equestria, but Ponyville shall be the true heart of this kingdom. It is here in your town that both I and my castle find a home, and Ponyville will know prosperity unmatched as it slowly becomes the beating heart of Equestria. Nightmare Moon finished her speech with a triumphant smile and a flare of her wings. The crowd, however, did not share her enthusiasm. The only pony that dared speak was Ivory Scroll. She shakily took a few steps towards Nightmare Moon and bowed to her new queen. You honor us, Your Highness. We will gladly serve as your home. Nightmare Moon smiled. Well chosen words, Maya. If you keep that attitude up, I may just let you keep your position.
Well, some of it can go down without a fight. Nightmare Moon and the crowd as a whole turned their heads and saw 6 ponies standing in a nearby empty street. Nightmare Moon recognized the 5 ponies. Applejack, Rarity, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Fluttershy were all together, wearing their elements of harmony. They were standing strong, except for Fluttershy, who was hiding behind Rarity. Still, all 5 of them were together. The 6th pony, however, was one Nightmare Moon did not recognize. She appeared to be a simple earth pony. Her coat was blue, and her mane was a mixture of white and silver. She was, for some reason, wearing a purple pointed hat that was decorated with silver and gold stars. She had on a cape that matched the hat, and stood with her head held aloft. It was a posture that reminded Nightmare Moon of Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. She hated that blue-colored pony already. Well, well, well. I was wondering when you 5 would show up. Who's the new mare? Nightmare Moon asked. Her name is... Applejack began, only for the blue pony to interrupt her. I believe that I can speak for myself. Thank you very much. The new pony sniffed. She then turned and gave Nightmare Moon a confident grin, as if she was looking down at some pony far beneath her. Remember this face well, Nightmare Moon, for it will be the face of your doom! The Blue Earth pony exclaimed as she pointed a hoof at the self-proclaimed queen. From this day, it will be I, the great and powerful Trixie, who will single-hoofedly vanquish you and bring peace and order back to Equestria. An eruption of magical fireworks and firecrackers erupted from behind Trixie, as if in fanfare for her words. The display, however, only made Nightmare Moon arch her eyebrows skeptically and look towards Applejack. You're kidding. You're kidding, right? I assure you, Nightmare Moon, this is no jest. Trixie crowed. A light purple glow encased the mare's hat, causing it to rise up and shift back on the pony's head. The adjustment revealed that she was, in fact, a unicorn. I, the great and powerful Trixie, shall defeat you! Okay, this has to be a joke, Nightmare Moon scoffed. This was your idea, Pinkie Pie, wasn't it? You 5 got together and decided to get on my good side by playing a prank. Very smart. But I think you may want to tell your friend there to tone it down. You wouldn't want me to actually believe you came here to defeat me, now would you? That is exactly what the great and powerful Trixie intends to do! She exclaimed. The smile faded from Nightmare Moon's face, and a threatening coldness filled her voice. Do you not understand who you challenge? Trixie lifted a hoof anxiously at Nightmare Moon's statement, as if she was going to take a step back, but instead she planted her hoof back down defiantly. I am fully aware of your power, but I wield one far greater. A power that I shall use to send you back to the dark pit you crawled out of. For you see, I am not a mere unicorn. I am the most powerful unicorn in all of Equestria. Nightmare Moon couldn't help but gape. This fool was either completely clueless or had a death wish. Who was crazy enough to be so boastful? The only time Nightmare Moon had ever heard a pony with such an ego was when... Nightmare Moon's eyes flickered, and she was struck with realization.
She knew this mare. Not personally, but she had heard of her. Twilight had told her a story about a blue unicorn who had come to town, boasting she had defeated an Ursa Major. But when an Ursa Minor came to town, the unicorn wasn't able to do anything, leaving Twilight to save the day. It was a tale that had become one of her favorite bedtime stories, and that memory caused Nightmare Moon to smirk. Oh, yes, of course. She spoke with a deceptively gentle tone. I've heard of you before. Great and powerful Trixie. You have? I mean, of course you have! Far and wide have ponies heard the tales of the miraculous feats of the great and powerful Trixie! She exclaimed before releasing more fireworks magic in the air. A chuckle escaped Nightmare Moon's lips. Yes, I know who you are. You're the egomaniac with the tacky hat that almost destroyed Ponyville with her boasting. Nightmare Moon's woods sucked the air out of Trixie's lung, made her mouth hang open, and caused her pupils to narrow into tiny dots. At least, Nightmare Moon continued, smiling devilishly. That's how Rarity put it. When Twilight told me about the last time you were here, she was more polite, though she basically said the same thing. Trixie glared at Rarity as she hissed in a whisper. You know her, and you told her that? Hey, don't get mad at her. She's not the one boasting that she's going to save the day all by herself, Rainbow Dash argued in Rarity's defense. And I shouldn't need to remind you that you're worth a rotten apple without the rest of us, Applejack added, pointing an accusing hoof at Trixie. Trixie met the harsh tone of Applejack's voice with a snarl. Hey, you're the ones who convinced me to come back here. You're the ones that came to me, and the only reason I agreed was because defeating Nightmare Moon would salvage my career. I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for you. So you'd better not mess this up. As amusing as it is to meet an overconfident show pony from one of Twilight's stories, Nightmare Moon interrupted, if only to keep the 6 ponies from squabbling amongst themselves. I am curious. What makes you think that you actually stand a chance against me? Just how do you plan on defeating me, an immortal alicorn, when you're nothing more than a mere unicorn? I, the great and powerful Trixie, intend to use the most powerful magic known to pony kind, for I am the new bearer of the element of magic, Trixie exclaimed. She lifted her hat again, to reveal that she was wearing a familiar tiara. She then quickly swapped the two things around, setting her hat back on her head and placing the tiara on top of the hat. That allowed her to proudly wear both at the same time. And, for the first time since her transformation, Nightmare Moon felt real fear. Where did you get those? She hissed as she drew a hoof back in fear. Nexus assured me he would secure them from Canterlot Tower. You can thank Princess Cadence for that, Rainbow Dash said with a confident smile. She got the elements out of Canterlot, and to us before Twilight disappeared, because Princess Celestia knew you'd try to take them from Canterlot when you attacked. Nightmare Moon had made a miscalculation. She'd come so far, but now her destruction was staring her down. She and Spell Nexus had not thought Princess Celestia would preemptively remove the elements of harmony from Canterlot Tower. They believed that Celestia would simply try to protect the elements, especially with Twilight missing in action. The elements, however, must have been sent to Ponyville within hours of her reappearance, before Twilight had even begun her search of the underground castle. In the Nightmare Moon's horror, Trixie had proved herself a capable replacement. The elements of harmony began to come to life. They glowed and began to lift the 6 wielders into the air. Nightmare Moon instinctively worked herself into a offensive position. She had been torn apart by the magical rainbow once. She would not let it happen again. She'd jump out of the way, try to escape, but she would not go down for a second time so easily. The spell continued to grow in power, and the 6 ponies were engulfed in light. The crowd began to cheer, and they looked on with eager eyes. The elements of harmony then launched their fabled rainbow at the moment Nightmare Moon saw. She was filled with an over-desire to laugh. The rainbow spat out by the elements of harmony was the size of a candy bar, and its colors were sickly and mismatched. It drifted on the wind like a leaf, and when it finally reached Nightmare Moon, the rainbow did not burn or hurt. All it did was make a small patch of her body feel warmer before it faded. If Nightmare Moon was to be honest, it was a rather pleasant sensation, like a warm blanket. As Nightmare Moon tried to contain the laughter caused by the pitiful display, she was struck with inspiration. It was a mischievous, almost childish idea, but it was too good to resist. She took a deep breath and howled with fake agony. She then let her body burst into indigo smoke like she was a balloon that had been popped. It was a sight that made the crowd gasp. They watched the smoky remnants of Nightmare Moon fade into the night air, and then turn to look at their supposed saviors, who were sprawled out on the ground. When the group was led by Twilight Sparkle, the magic of the elements left them feeling refreshed and rejuvenated. This time, however, they were covered in scuffs and scratches. It was like the ancient magic had worked against them, not with them. Trixie herself hastily shoved the tiara off her head and onto the dirt, before proceeding to rub both sides of her skull. Her head was pounding with the worst headache she had ever had in her life. The first to recover was Rarity, who forced herself to her hooves and looked around for any sign of Nightmare Moon. Is it over? I reckon it is, Applejack answered. A small smile formed on her face. Tell you the truth, I didn't think it'd be that easy a second time, or that Trixie would actually be able to pull this off. Trixie huffed, her large ego unaffected by her splitting headache. You doubted that I could be the bearer of magic? Don't you know? You can always count on the great and powerful Trixie. Applejack rolled her eyes, but the gesture went unnoticed as the residents of Ponyville began to circle them. The crowd was cheering for their heroes and the defeat of Nightmare Moon. Soon the princess would grace the town with her presence. The moon would be lowered and the sun would rise and everything would be normal. And sure, the sun would rise. Trixie stood up and began to bask in adoration, soaking it all in. Yes, celebrate, ponies of Ponyville, for I, the great and powerful Trixie, have saved Equestria all by myself. I truly am the greatest equine who has ever lived. Very quickly, the cheers from the crowd began to die, as Ponyville's residents began to remember why they didn't particularly like the great and powerful Trixie. Still, they wouldn't let Trixie's gloating ruin their happiness. Nightmare Moon had been defeated. It was a day to celebrate. However, the celebration ended before it began. From amongst the crowd's hooves, several trails of indigo smoke swirled up into the air towards the bearers of the elements of harmony. The smoke formed into a swirling tornado, which sucked up all 6 mares despite their panicked shouts. The tornado spun the mares round and around, tossing and spinning them as it moved towards the town hall. Then as quickly as it had picked them up, the tornado dropped the 6 mares at the foot of the town hall steps, leaving them in a crumbled heap. Pinkie Pie was the only one among them to raise her head, and her eyes were spinning as she asked, Any pony else see the carriage that hit us? Pinkie Pie's question drew a haughty laugh from the swirling indigo tornado. It had moved to the top of the town hall steps and materialized into Nightmare Moon. Once more the crowd gasped, for not only was Nightmare Moon still alive, but she now had all 6 of the elements of harmony in her mane. After glaring down at the 6 mares for a time, Nightmare Moon let a creepy smile on her lips as she descended the steps. She focused her attention on Trixie, the mare who believed herself to be a match for Equestria's new queen. She stood over Trixie, watched and waited as she recovered from the ride in the tornado. Trixie sat up, rubbed her head, and when she finally opened her eyes, her nose was but inches from Nightmare Moon's tall, slender legs. She tilted her head up slowly and saw Nightmare Moon smiling down at her with a wide, triumphant grin. Gotcha. That one word from Nightmare Moon made Trixie yelp. She jumped, turned, and tried to run away. She, however, got no more than a few steps before Nightmare Moon wrapped her in her magic, catching one of Trixie's legs. This caused her to stumble and trip, crashing to the ground with a painful thud. Yet despite her rough landing, Trixie quickly turned over onto her back. She stared with fearful, wide eyes as Nightmare Moon closed in on her like a wolf would tower over an injured rabbit. What a disappointing rebellion, Nightmare Moon commented. Then again, I should have expected more from a mare so second-rate. compared to Twilight Sparkle. Now, what am I to do with you? Perhaps I should take a memento so I can fondly remember your pathetic attempt to overthrow me? Yes, I do believe that I need a trophy to hang on my wall. At that, Nightmare Moon's mane arched back and struck out, diving towards Trixie with murderous intent. Trixie flinched and screamed at the sight, yet she never felt the pain of death. Instead, she felt something being taken off of her. Nightmare Moon had done nothing more but to take her hat and cape. What? Were you afraid that I would take your pretty little head? Nightmare Moon sardonically asked. Don't worry. If I wanted that, I'll come back for it. Now, if I remember Twilight's story correctly, this is the part where you realize what a fool you were, and you make yourself useful and run away.
Mark my words, you haven't seen the last of me, Trixie vowed weakly, trying to save face even though she knew Nightmare Moon was sparing her. For while you may have won the battle, the war is far from over. The great and powerful Trixie never runs away. She only makes tactical retreats.
At that, Trixie used her magic to summon up a smoke screen. She then turned and bolted, running as fast as her hooves would carry her. It was the same kind of retreat she had made when the Ursa Minor had attacked, and the display left most Ponyville residents groaning. While the crowd was disappointed with Trixie, Nightmare Moon reveled in her most recent success. The one thing that could possibly defeat her that was left, the elements of harmony, were now in her possession. She could now make sure they were never used again. So thrilling was that, her absolute victory, Nightmare Moon couldn't help keep herself from having a little more fun. She looked over the crowd of ponies that hung on her every word out of fear. Nightmare Moon once again turned into an indigo cloud, her body swirling and condensing quickly before she rematerialized, not as a regal alicorn, but instead Nightmare Moon had taken on Trixie's appearance and was wearing the cape and hat she plucked from the real Trixie but a few moments ago.
Behold, Ponyville,
a shape-shifted Nightmare Moon shouted out in Trixie's own voice.
I am the weak and cowardly Trixie. Thrill as I attempt to pretend that sparklers and flashy lights are worthy of admiration. Be dazzled as I bore you with speeches about my unfounded belief in my own abilities. Gasp as I turn tail and run at the first sight of danger.
The not Trixie began to laugh haughtily, finding amusement in her own joke. Her performance, however, was met with utter silence. No pony in the crowd was giving so much as a chortle or a giggle. The silence made the not Trixie's face contort, first into an expression of disappointment, then into one of annoyance.
Plebeians. You would think that they would appreciate a mare that can shapeshift at will.
Nightmare grumbled to herself. She changed back into her normal appearance, and Trixie's hat and cape joined the elements of harmony in the embrace of her magical mane. With her impromptu attempt at celebrity roasting failing to earn a single laugh, Nightmare Moon redirected her focus on the 5 remaining mares that dared to oppose her. She expected them to be shocked, filled with fear, or to be trembling in her shadow, but they were, in fact, arguing amongst themselves.
I told you we shouldn't have used her,
Rainbow Dash barked at Applejack.
Oh, hush up,
Applejack snapped back.
She's the only unicorn we could find who has a special talent for magic. Even that was a long shot.
So, my little ponies, Nightmare Moon began, ending the disagreement and forcing the 5 mares to take notice of her. What am I going to do with you?
Do whatever you want. You can't make us talk,
Dash shouted defiantly.
Yeah,
Pinkie Pie agreed, only to look at Rainbow Dash quizzically for a moment.
Wait, what did we talk about? Pinkie, shush!
Nightmare Moon chuckled. Your bickering alone is very amusing to me. How would you 5 like to be in my personal court gestures? I'll even let you have visitation rights with Twilight Sparkle. Your Majesty, the law dictates that there's only one punishment for those who dare to attack you. Nightmare Moon turned her attention to the voice, seeing that it was one of her bodyguards. She was surprised it actually lingered nearby after her fake defeat. She would have expected them to bolt for the castle or to inform Spell Nexus of what happened. Still, they had remained and were now bowing down to her respectfully. Heaving a heavy sigh, Nightmare Moon turned her attention away from the guards that were interrupting her fun. Let me guess. One of Nexus's laws? Yes, Your Highness, one of her guards confirmed. And what does this law say? That any pony that attacks your royal grace is to be met with the gallows, the other guard answered.
Did he just say gallows?
Rarity asked in a hushed, disbelieving whisper. Applejack nodded. He did, Sugar Cube.
But what about the animals in my cottage?
Fluttershy asked as she started to tear up in panic.
There are some that need medicine. I have to go take care of them. There's a little ferret who needs his bandages changed, and there's songbirds that are just about ready to take their first flight. What'll happen if I'm not there to catch them if they fall?
You be strong, Sugar Cube. I promise the little animals will get along just fine. Applejack tried to reassure her. Just like how Big Mac, Apple Bloom, and Granny Smith will get along. It'll be hard, especially when the apple bucking season comes. But I don't think Big Mac will be able to handle all the trees himself, but Apple Bloom's getting big. She'll be bucking apples any year now. He'll be able to help.
But I can't go to the gallows,
Rarity wailed in panic.
I just can't. I can't leave my family behind like that. And who'll throw the parties when I'm gone?
Pinkie Pie asked, her usual curly mane starting to deflate and fall straight.
Who's going to make the cake when I'm gone? The Cakes have their anniversary party soon, and there's a wedding party that'll have to cater. But then there's a birthday party for Lyra and...
What's wrong with all of you? Rainbow Dash bellowed at her friends. She got to her hooves and fluttered her wings.
We can't give up. We can't take her without the elements.
Rainbow Dash left the Nightmare Moon. She arched her hoof back, making it very clear she intended to punch Nightmare Moon square in the jaw. Nightmare Moon, however, made no effort to dodge or duck Rainbow Dash's attack. For she didn't have to. Before Rainbow Dash could even lay a hoof on Nightmare Moon, the two royal guards rushed her and tackled her. They pinned Rainbow Dash to the ground, and even though she struggled to free herself, the stallions were too strong. She had no hope of escape, and finally the reality of the situation was starting to settle in. We've lost. Applejack sniffed and rubbed her hoof across her nose. She was doing her best not to cry. She was the strong one of her friends, but she was losing that fight. I'm sorry, Rainbow. That's what it's looking like. But this isn't fair, Rainbow Dash complained. She began to struggle against the guards again as tears formed in her eyes.
I was going to go to the Wonderbolt trials this summer. I was going to be a Wonderbolt. I promised Scootaloo that I'd teach her how to fly like I do when her wings were stronger. I promised her that I would. And who's going to clear the weather for Ponyville if I'm not around?
Rainbow Dash's questions were the final straw. Applejack, who had been struggling to be strong, broke like a thin twig. She began to cry with her friends. The Nightmare Moon watched as all 5 mares crumbled under the cost of their attempted rebellion in Woodincourt. And as she watched them, Nightmare Moon knew she should have been happy. She should have been enjoying the sight of their suffering. Instead, her chest felt tight, as if something had reached her inside and she was now squeezing on her heart. My queen, shall we place them under arrest? One of the guards asked. Nightmare Moon opened her mouth to reply. She could not bring herself to say yes. Her words were too heavy on her tongue. No matter what she tried, she couldn't force herself to. She could not doom them, Twilight's friends, to the death of the gallows. Thus Nightmare Moon said the only thing she could. No, you ought to let them go. What? The shout of disbelief came not from the guards, but from every pony who had heard Nightmare Moon's order. Mouths were hanging open in shock, their eyes wide in disbelief. None could believe what they had just heard, but Nightmare Moon confirmed what she said was true. Yes, let them go. I am officially pardoning them as my first act as Queen of Equestria. But my queen, the law says... One of the guards tried to protest. Am I, or am I not, your queen? Nightmare Moon snapped. Now, return and inform Nexus that I want him to take me through all the new laws he's enacted. Every single one of them. But my queen, we aren't supposed to leave your side for any... Now! Nightmare Moon bellowed, her angry voice punctuated by a lightning bolt directed at the hooves of the guards. The guards didn't waste a moment after that.
They all took off and flew towards the now above-ground castle as fast as their wings could take them. Nightmare Moon kept her eyes on the Pegasi for a few moments before turning her gaze down on the 5 mares who were staring back at her. They, along with the rest of the crowd, didn't dare say a word, fearful that uttering a single thing might change her mind. It was Rarity who finally dared to break her silence. You're letting us go? It is a repayment of a debt and nothing more, Nightmare Moon answered coldly as she bared her wings. For the kindness you showed me when I was but a cowardly filly, I am now sparing your lives. Do not expect the same mercy should you try a rebellion again. With those final words, Nightmare Moon took flight. She circled once more over Ponyville, looking down at the crowd and seeing their fear-filled eyes. She then turned in the direction of her freshly risen castle and flew towards it, with the elements of harmony, along with Trixie's hat and cape, floating in her magical mane. With a flutter of wings, Nightmare Moon landed on her bedroom balcony and stepped inside. She floated the elements of harmony to a nearby dresser and tucked them away, along with her armor. She removed her helmet, at last, and hung it on the stud from the wall. Then she simply tossed Trixie's hat and cape onto a table, intending to deal with them later. Now, the armorless Nightmare Moon lay on her bed, breathing out slowly as she sank into the softness of her blanket. She wanted nothing more than to sleep soundly, yet as she tried to rest, she found sleep would not come easily. Her mind began to turn. It went over her actions the past few hours, and was struggling to understand her most recent choices. First, she didn't attack the guards. She could have easily sent the children of Nightmare to the castle and seized it by force. In fact, that was what the royal guards expected her to do, to be a direct threat to them. Instead, she had gone a more subterfuge route. She had impersonated soldiers and infiltrated the castle, all so that she could get to Celestia without hurting anybody else. Second, she didn't kill Celestia or Luna. In her anger, she came close to finishing Celestia. All it would have taken was a flick of her sword. But then the princess said those words. Celestia made her think of Twilight, and how she would react to the news of her mentor being slain. Then, even during the fight with Luna, Celestia's word hung in her mind. And in the end, she banished Luna to the moon, just as she had banished Celestia to the sun. Third, she had spared Twilight's friends. In fact, she let them go completely unpunished. Yes, she had the elements of harmony now, but would those mares ever truly accept their rule? Would they not simply attempt to free Twilight and retake the elements? It would have made more sense to take them out permanently. Yet like Luna and Celestia, she had spared them, just as she had spared Twilight. She should have struck down Twilight Sparkle the moment Nexus brought her to the throne room. In fact, she should have done it the night she was fully resurrected, when she found Twilight in the crowd. Yet, whenever her thoughts returned to such dark action, such as taking the lives of those ponies, she couldn't bring herself to do it. Nightmare Moon shook her head violently. What was wrong with her? She was no longer that scared crybaby Nyx. She was Nightmare Moon, Queen of Equestria and Bearinger of the Night Eternal. She was the sole immortal alicorn left in the world. The most powerful pony that ever lived, and ever would live. She had won. In all aspects, her victory was absolute. She had everything she ever wanted. Celestia and Luna were gone. She now held the elements of harmony, the one thing that could defeat her. She was the one true Queen of Equestria, and she would reign for millennia to come. Even if she wasn't able to kill, she didn't need to. No pony Equestria wouldn't, or the world, would dare defy her. She had won.